Hello, this is Richard Klein. I put together this presentation in advance for our Saturday meeting. I'd hope that if I could get this presentation to you before this Saturday, you all might have a chance to listen to it, and then we might save some time since we only have a half an hour available for this Saturday. So the goal that's set forth in this presentation is to maximize forest retention on the Summergate site and all similar sites in North Credit River. So as you know, I used this website, MuniCode, to do a search of all Minnesota tree preservation laws, identified these laws that exist in the state, and then I compared all of these variables and found that the Wazada law is the most protective. Unfortunately, there is no Minnesota tree preservation law or a similar law anywhere in the country that prohibits all forest clearance. However, the Wazada law comes closest to that optimum. Here's the first page of the 8-page Wazada tree preservation law. The Wazada law, like all others, are based upon diameter breast high of trees. That is, they begin protecting trees that have a diameter at breast height that's above a certain threshold, 6 inches with regard to Wazada. And of course, diameter breast high is measured 4.5 feet off the ground or 54 inches above the ground. And you get the diameter of the tree by dividing the circumference by 3.14. So Wazada differentiates between heritage and significant trees. Hardwood trees get the greatest protection, and any tree that's more than 25 inches or greater in diameter, that's a heritage tree. Significant hardwood trees are 6 inches in diameter or greater. And the Wazada tree preservation law, like all, provide the greatest protection for heritage trees. In fact, the requirement is that there be zero removal of heritage trees. However, no jurisdiction completely prohibits removal. You just have to do everything that you can, and you got to show that there's no practical alternative before you remove a heritage tree. Significant trees, they're allowed to be removed. In the case of Wazada, you can remove up to 10% before you have to start replacing those removed trees. So here's the tree replacement formula for Wazada. Significant trees are replaced at a ratio of 1 inch for every inch of DBH removed. Heritage trees, it's a 2-to-1 replacement ratio. And all jurisdictions allow a fee in lieu of planting trees on site. Here's how the tree replacement formula works. Here we have a significant tree, circumference of 32 inches, so the diameter is 10 inches. Makes it a significant tree since it's between 6 inches and 25 inches. There, the replacement ratio is 1-to-1. So if you remove a 10-inch significant tree, then you got to plant 5 2-inch trees on site or pay a fee in lieu of so you can plant off-site. So how would the Wazada law work if it were applied to Summergate? Well, of course, here's the great inventory of trees on the Summergate site that Neil and others compiled. So heritage trees are anything that's 25 inches or greater. So I assume that all 374 of these red oaks are heritage trees. And then significant tree is anything that's 6 inches up to 25 inches. So we got all of these significant trees here. So of the 25,058 trees on the Summergate site, 63% qualify as significant and 1.5% as heritage trees. All 374 heritage trees must be saved along with 90% of the significant trees. Heritage trees are replaced at a ratio of 2-to-1, significant trees 1-to-1. So how aggressively the tree preservation law will be enforced in Credit River depends upon these rascals and the folks that replace them in the future. If there is a strong commitment, then then forest preservation on sites like Summergate will likely be as stringent as it is in Wazada. So here's an example of what less stringent forest preservation might look like. This example is from a site in Eden Prairie, Minnesota called Noble Hill, a case that we were involved in last year. This aerial shows the existing forest and the number of scattered trees. This is the tree preservation plan, and X indicates that a tree is going to be removed, and these other symbols indicate that a tree would remain. So as you can see, the forest down here is mostly going to remain, the forest in this area, whereas forest throughout the rest of the site, a lot of the trees are going to be removed. So of the 1,483 dBH of heritage trees on the site, 44% were slated to be saved. Of the significant trees, 34% were, 52% were going to be removed, and of the remainder, 34% were proposed for planting as isolated trees on the site, and the applicant was going to pay a fee of $207,000 to cover the 66% of trees removed. So one of the things that you always need to be careful of when you're trying to get a city council to adopt a law that has been in use in another jurisdiction, you want to make sure that that other jurisdiction still likes their law and that it's still working. Last thing you want to do is to propose the adoption of a law from another city and find out that that other city doesn't like their law and they're thinking of getting rid of it. Well, I had sent an email to the planning director of Wazada and got back this reply from their park planner, Nick Kaiser. Here's one of the key questions that I'd asked, and again, the primary reason for sending the email was just to confirm that the law was still there and it was still working and it was still allowing growth. I asked Nick how often the fee in lieu of planting one site is allowed. And what he said was that it happens, but it's only happened 2 or 3 times in the past 3 years. So obviously the law is still working in Wazada, it's allowing growth, and there isn't a whole lot in terms of off-site planting occurring in Wazada. So it looks like a pretty good law to me. In fact, I recommend that you go ahead and ask the City Council to adopt the Wazada law. And if you agree, I'll draft a letter on Credit River Rural Alliance letterhead, which will be signed by each of your co-chairs, and it will be addressed to the City Council. The law would set forth the benefits of the law, explain that the Wazada law has preserved trees without stifling growth, and it would end by asking the mayor and the council members for an opportunity to meet with each of them one-on-one. You would then place a follow-up call to the mayor and council members to confirm receipt of the letter and to schedule a meeting with each. So there are 2 likely counter-arguments that you might hear. One involves this 6th District Court of Appeals decision from last year. And the city attorney might claim that, gee, this 6th Court decision, it forbids Credit River from adopting a tree preservation law, which is absurd. That's not true. All this decision said was that a tree preservation law has to document that the benefits justify the fees charged when trees are removed from a site. That's all it said. So the other possible counter-argument would be the city attorney might say, gee, we can't consider a tree preservation law because Summergate is going to come before the city council at some point. Well, that is also absurd. We're proposing a law that's not specific to Summergate, but applies to the entirety of the city. So therefore, I think any competent attorney, and I'm not an attorney, but I think any competent attorney would say, there's no reason why the city couldn't adopt the tree preservation law, even while other projects like Summergate are going through the process. So if it turns out, though, that the city council buys either one of those counter-arguments, then here are a couple of steps. Sam Ketchum was one of 2 authors of this article that appeared in Minnesota City Magazine explaining the 6th District decision and that it doesn't preclude Credit River from adopting a tree preservation law. If needed, we can engage Mr. Ketchum or another attorney to explain that to the City Council. Or you could ask one of the 2 attorneys that are already interested in the case, Joe Sincata or Stuart Alger, if they would do that research for you. And of course, here's the two previous questions that we had asked both attorneys to consider and tell us what their fee would be. And here's their fee estimates for researching these two questions. I assume that asking them to research the legality of the tree law in light of the 6th District decision wouldn't be that much more. That concludes the presentation. At this point, we can take questions.